Okay, are we live? Oh, we are live. Okay, cool. Let's put this out to people. And then hey, let's see. Are there people already in? No, I don't want the stream showing me things. Hey, hello everyone. Hopefully we get people in here. Once you come in, or if you're here, say hi in chat if you have an account. If not, you might have to chat through the Discord. I'll be keeping an eye on both, although the Twitch chat is easier. Okay. Let's see if I can up the volume at all. Can't really hear myself here. Let me just test something. Testing. That's why I'm not hearing anything. Okay. It's going to be coming to it twice now, so let's turn that to muted, and then if I just speak up a bit, does this work out fine? Where am I hearing myself from? Here. There we go. Mute that. So here, and then looks like we are good to start. Okay. I've just opened up a new Unity thing, so I'm going to go ahead and start off by making a floor. So I will create a 3D object, which will simply be a plane, as that's all you need for a floor. As you can see, it's just created a plane here, which is basically just a flat 2D shape, which has a collider, so you can stop physics from falling through it. So it's very useful for floors. So if we move it to the 0 point, and then I'm going to be using hotkeys a lot, but basically you can use these things up at the top. This will move it, or you can type them in here if you want to move to a specific location. Rotating, scaling, and then various other things like this rectangle tool, which allows you to do things like this to planes. I believe it gets disabled if you click on things that can't be used with it. No, it does not. So you'll need to, yeah. And this allows you to do everything. It's a bit unwieldy. But what we want to do is we want to make this plane bigger. How big do we want it? Let's make it twice as big as it was originally, which means that's a decent size to start with. Maybe make it a bit larger. Pulling on the middle extends it in all directions. Now we've got a nice flat plane, which will be able to walk around on once we put in a walking around character. So then, the first thing we'll want to do after creating the plane is we'll want to create something which we'll want to create something for the character. Because right now we have this camera, which is here, which basically, if you click play, will look through the camera, but we can't do anything. And you can't add physics to a camera, so we need to add it to something. So in that case, what I find easiest just to do is to go into here and create a capsule. And then we can move the capsule to where the camera is, just by dragging it over, roughly. We don't really need it to be exact, as long as it's not clipping through the floor. Then if we grab the camera and attach to the capsule by dragging on top of it, this makes it the child of the capsule. It will allow it to move when the capsule is moved. So when I move the capsule, it also moves the camera. So all of its position is relative to where the capsule is. Let's move it so that that's in the center-ish, and then back a bit. So right now I'm just using this camera preview down here to look at what the camera sees and use that to adjust it. to be a little bit of a third-person camera, like you'd see in a lot of games. There we go. That looks good. If you have any questions, ask them in the chat or message me on Discord. If you can't hear me, turn up the volume or message me. If you can't hear me, you can't hear me saying message me so that I can know how to speak up higher or louder. But anyway. So now let's make this guy able to move around. So what you can use is, if you don't want to do any sort of scripting, you can just use the character controller, which very simply creates this thing. I believe it immediately starts with some options inside it. I will check that now. Now, I haven't used some of these things in a while. So you will need to use some coding with this, but basically this just allows you to do a bunch of different things really easily with it. Like, for instance, having it, how much of a slope can this character climb up at a time? Alright. Although, yeah, just leave that in there. Okay, so what we'll need to add is a controller, which will just create a new script. That's not how you spell controller. Is it 2 L's or 1 L? Whatever. There we go. Alright. So, now we've added this controller onto this character. Now we have to edit it. So this is where we start getting into programming stuff, which can get a bit complicated, depending on what you're doing. In this case, we're going to be pretty simple for the most part, just making it move. It might seem a little bit complicated to start with just because I'm working with some things that you haven't seen before. So this is all written in C#, which is the one that it uses by default. You can use different languages with it, but I'd recommend using C#. So for instance, processing, which you might be using for design with data, is written in a different language. It's written in Java rather than C#. So we'll first want to set up some variables, which are basically like in algebra, if you had an x, like for instance a 2 times x plus 1 equals something. Basically what we're saying is x, or in this case speed, equals something. So in this case we're going to make it 20. This is a float. This little f at the end just designates it as a float, which means it uses point numbers, so we can do 20.5 or anything like that. So the float is a short for floating point, which means it uses a floating point, which is just like a decimal point, which means you can just place dots and make very fine number adjustments. So then, if people are still with me, then we will head into some other things. So what we want we also want a couple of other types of speed, so this will be useful for later, is just how fast you can move while in the air. Don't worry about this, I'll talk about it later as we won't actually be using it to start out. And yeah, so placing the little f after it just means that it's that type of number, the float. And so, yes. So, what happens is when you start the program, this void start will trigger. Every time the program runs, so every frame basically, it might actually be run more than once per frame, but effectively once per frame, like in any video game, it runs this void update. Don't worry about what these actually mean. You just have to know everything between these two places is run when you start the program, and everything between these two brackets are run every frame. So for now, we will just need to create a final variable. And a rigid body is basically what applies the physics. We'll have to add one to the controller before we can actually start running around. I will do that later. Right now we don't need to right now. Well, we will need to eventually. But at the exact moment, let's just continue with scripting. So we'll just need to grab the rigid body that is on our character via this. What this will do is it will just grab the component of the rigid body and set it to this right when we start the program. And then down here in the update, set up two new floats, which will quite simply be grabbing our controls. So The reason I'm using the get axis notation is that it allows you to very easily get the controls and also allows you to map controllers onto the controls without saying, yes, you need to press W. I could plug in a PlayStation controller and then use the joysticks as horizontal and vertical. The same as I would use my WASD or arrow keys or whatever I use on the computer. The next step is so we've got these two different directions that we want to move in, or how much we want to move in these two different directions. Now we've got to create a vector 3, which is basically a direction of movement. So this is the variable that we're creating, called movement, and we're creating a new vector 3, and that vector 3 is going to have the horizontal movement. It's going to have no upwards movement, and it's going to have the vertical movement. And then we want to add, so how we're going to actually be moving the character is basically by adding a force in the direction we want to go. This is a bit of a slidey way. You'll see when I get in. It makes you slide a little bit once you finish because it isn't actually just moving you depending on the movement. There are other ways to do it, but this way is really easy. So we want to grab our rigid body that we detected earlier, because remember that's what we can add forces to. That's the physics. And we want to go add force. We want to go movement. So that's this thing. And then we want to times that by our speed. So we want to move faster if we have a higher speed, or slower if we have a lower speed. So now that we have that, we should all be ready to go to jump back into here. Look at our capsule. Not that one. And we want to add as I said before, we need a rigid body in order to add physics to it. So we're going to add a rigid body here. And in this case, what should happen is we should be able to press our arrow keys and start moving. Although, you can see there's an issue. Because if we press it, it sort of falls over. If we look at it from the scene view, so the scene view here allows us to see it from any angle. It's our God mode, and allows us to move things around even while the game is running. So this just allows you to see what the game would see. So let's try moving it around. Let's drag the game view over to here. Let's try moving it around. You can see it just falls over immediately. And then it starts doing weird things. And you can see the camera is flying around all over the place, which is why you get this weird, like, rolling. Or not rolling, but the world is rolling around you because it's moving relative to this, so it looks like it's staying still. Anyway, let's not do that. Let's fix that. How do we fix that? Let me very quickly check something. So remember how to do this. Yes, here we go. So under the rigid body, there are a couple of cool things that we can do. First of all, we can uncheck use gravity, which will allow us to move and not have gravity affect us. Which isn't actually the most useful if we want to be able to jump later. So we want to keep using gravity. But here's the important bit, the constraints. So, if we go ahead and freeze our rotation, then, as you can see, we won't rotate when we move. So we'll be standing up all the time. Now you can see we fall off. We might fall off, but at least we still can move easily. And we don't fall over. So that's good. Now I can't jump, so let's do that. Let's make us able to jump. And also let's make this land a bit bigger, because I fell off way too fast. There we go. That should be nice and large. So let's go make us able to jump. So, heading back to the controller. It's pretty simple. All we have to do is we have to add a force going upwards to make us jump. It's pretty self-explanatory. Want to check if this thing is saying anything. Nope. Okay. So we just have to make a force upwards when we press a button to jump. Now, of course, there is actually a mapped button to jump, which will allow us to tell when it jumps. Or rather, when the player presses the button to jump. So, this is an if statement. It will be used a lot in games. Basically, it's saying if whatever is in between these two brackets is true. So right now it's saying if the input of jump is true, so, and basically by the function of doing this thing, it says true if you are pressing the button. So if it is, then let's go ahead and jump into the air. So, now of course, we would normally need to create a new vector in order to move up, but Unity has done something very nice for us, and that we can just do vector3 dot up. And this just gives us a vector that points directly upwards. And then of course we want to times it by our jump power in order to make it actually able to be adjusted. So now, if I jump back into Unity, we should be able to jump when I press the spacebar. And there you go. We are jumping and moving. If we jump over here, we can see, ooh, we're going off the edge. If I drag this around so that you can see it, then you can see that we can move around and we can jump. We're jumping very small amount, and this is where I'll tell you a little bit of an extra bit about the variables that I showed you earlier. When I created them, I called them public, which at its very basic level means anyone can take a look at them. But Unity does something very nice with the public variables in that it places them right here inside the game, inside the Unity thing. So if you look, here's our controller script, which has just been placed on the capsule, which is the character. And we've got all these different variables which we set in there, but now we can change out here. So let's make our jump a bit bigger, because that jump was pretty pitiful. So now I've upped it to 30 instead of 10. Let's try jumping. There you go, you can see we jump higher. And if we want to put it to something ridiculous, we can jump ridiculously high. Don't know how long that's going to take them down. But hopefully it'll happen eventually, and hopefully it won't fall through the floor. So I think 40, or 30 was a pretty good one. I think 40 might be good. Now, yeah, we're way up there. Okay, I'll just reset us quickly. And, so something to be aware of is when you change things while you're in game, it won't change it outside of it. So you'll have to copy it and paste it back in once you stop the game running. So in this case I have to rewrite it as 40 and I'll have to rewrite it again later. But this allows us to jump. An issue you'll notice pretty much immediately once you start trying it out and test out things is I can jump, and then 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 I can jump. So it doesn't actually matter if I'm touching the ground. I can just keep jumping. So I can just use it as a jetpack and say goodbye to the world. Now we're in space again. Where did we go? Very high up. So, in order to fix that, we'll just need to do something pretty simple. Well, it's a little bit more complex. But, as we're going, we're adding on more complexity and more complexity. So I'll change that to 30. If you have any questions again, say them in the chat. I'll go ahead and respond to them. Okay. Alright. So, let's get on to making it able to stopping us from jumping while we're in the air. So the easiest way to do this is to make a variable, which is just, I like to make it public because that way I can see it while I'm in the game in Unity, and if there's any issues with it, I can tell there. But in this case, I'm going to make a bool, which is short for Boolean, which basically means it is a value with two things. It is either true or it is false. And I'm going to call it on ground. And I will start that as true. Because it will be. We'll be on the ground to start with, because we'll immediately fall into the ground. So, what this will do is it'll say, hey, I'm true. So if we use an if, like I said earlier. Since that's made this chat, I will just do that. Okay, where was I? Alright, stopping it from getting off the ground. So, if statements, they'll do this thing if it is true. If whatever is in between these two brackets is true. So, we want to make sure that we are on the ground when we jump. So if we are on ground, then we can jump. So we both have to press the button, and then it checks if we're on the ground, and then it'll get us to jump. Right. So once you've got this, when you jump, right, you're going to be going up into the air. So then you're not going to be on the ground anymore. So we can pretty easily just go into here. We can go, no, you're not on the ground anymore. So now on ground is false. So then when it goes through this again, it will say, no, I'm not on ground, and then it won't do this. You can see that once we get into the game, and I'll show you that now. So now I will jump. Put in the game. I will jump. Or I will move around very quickly and not be able to jump. Let me check what's going on here. So I'm going to use something that I use a lot. Okay. So someone's just asked me a question. Yashar, not sure how to pronounce it, but you asked me a question in the Discord about how I attach the camera to the character. Let's rename that character. So how I attached it, basically, so it is normally like this, right? And what you can do is you can drag it on top of the character or the capsule, and that will make it like this. It'll make it into the child of the character, the character capsule, whatever you want to call it. You can do that with any object, but then while it is the child of that character, it will always move relative to it. So when I move it in the actual editor, you can see the camera moves as well. If you want to move the camera around, you can move it independently, but whenever you move the character around, it will also move the camera with it. And this holds true while in the game, which is why the camera follows the character around. So, then, let me go back here, and we can go to here. So, what I'm using here is debug, debug.log, which is very simply a little tool which you can use in order to see how your code is actually working, if things are running or not, and find out where the problem is. So I'm going to say and I'm going to have it log that, and I'll show you where these are logged to. Let's go. So, what this will do is it will allow us to jump into the game and let me know if you're okay with that answer from earlier about the attaching the camera to the character, or if you want me to explain that a bit more. Anyway, back to this part. You can see down here where we have a project, which is where all the things inside the project are. So like our script is there. There is this little tab saying console. If you head over there, you'll see an empty thing for now. But this is where the debugs will go. So if I click jump, then it should stick something in there. And that tells me jump is not being registered for some reason. So I need to look into that. But you can also see in the corner that on ground is turning to false when I press the jump button. Oh, wait, I'm just not showing it. Never mind, don't worry about that. You can see it here. I had just disabled it. The logs, I was just showing errors and warnings. But yes, so if I manually click it to true, and then clear this, manually click it to true, and then jump, and you can see I jumped, and I was on the ground, and there's a bunch more jumped events because it was while I was pressing the button that I was trying to jump. The issue was, I never got off the ground. This might be because that jump power was for this many jumps, because I was pressing, like even a tap of the button was pressing the button for a long time, so I was jumping a bunch of times. So now I've upped the jump power, and we'll see if that works. And there we go. So let's move that down a bit. That's an unreasonable amount. So now that I've done that, you might have noticed another problem, which I haven't addressed yet, which is that once we jump once, we're now no longer on the ground, so we can't jump anymore. So that we've just got to go, and I can do it manually here every time, but we don't want to do that. That's silly. So let's go into the code and change that. It's just 400, so we don't have that issue again. And then head into the code and change that. So what we want to do is detect when we hit the ground. Now, Unity has a great thing for doing this, which is called, which is not in the Void update and not in the not in the start, so not in the update, not in the start, because you don't want to be setting it to true every frame, because that might happen while you're in the air. But what we do want to do it is when we collide with something. So when we collide with something. So basically what this means is when we hit the ground, it will set the on ground to true, because the ground has this collider. And the character has this collider. So when the two colliders touch, they will act as physics, like you've been seeing. It doesn't fall through the floor. And it will allow you to do whatever it does in here. So, quite simply, we want to make it so that we are noted as being on the ground. Apparently I can't spell true. So, if that makes sense to people, if you want, ask me a question, and then I can, or if you want me to just explain it again, go ahead and say that, and I'll do it again. I'm fine with that. And you can see, now that we go in, you can jump, and then when you hit the ground, this thing turns to true. And then we can jump again. We can jump again. Although our console's filled with little logs that we've jumped. So we might want to go ahead and stop doing these things. So we could delete them, or we could do something called commenting, which is normally used to basically make your code easier to read by adding little bits of context in. But you can use it to make something just not be read by the program. So anything behind these two slashes will not be read by the program. The program will just ignore it. It doesn't care what's there. Which is a real issue. If you put it here, then the program will start getting angry at you because now it's got some weird brackets here for no reason. So you don't want to do that. But we don't need to log that we've jumped in or are on the ground now, because we've got that working. So what's the next thing I should do? Do people want me to show you how to push things around? Or yeah. So either I'll make a little bit more of a level, or I'll show you guys how to make things that you can push around once you can move, because now we can move around and jump pretty easily. So it might be cool to have some other things on this level other than just us, for us to interact with and move around. I also might slow us down a bit because that is very fast. So while people respond to that, either in Twitch chat or in the Discord, I will just go ahead and lower the speed down a little. Okay. If we have no opinions, that's fine too. Just see where the stream's actually up to. Oh, you're just slightly behind. Okay, you know what? The pushing things around is more fun. So, let's show you how to do that. And it'll be more useful than just showing you how to place blocks all around the place. So, what we can do is we can just create some things. Let's make a cube that you can push around. A little box. Maybe we'll use this for getting points somehow later. So, as this is now a box, we can add a rigid body, which remember that's what the physics were. And now you're done. That's as easy as it is to make things that you can push around. We can, it's very difficult. We can push it around. Yeah, so you can see some issues, which is when I start going, I just sort of slide a little. Which that is an issue with this vector method of adding on speed to move around. And now we have no idea. We can't move the camera yet because we haven't done that yet. Doing turning is a bit of a more complicated equation. I can show you that. Strange. I can show you that a bit later, but I might, as this has been going on for an hour, I might just make a very quick show you how to make a bit of a point system. Because, you know, I said we were going to make a game. Might as well make a game. So, the point system, we're going to use two new things that we haven't used before. We are going to use, first of all, a piece of UI. And we're going to be using a pretty simple piece of UI. If you can scroll down here, you can do UI, and we're just going to make a piece of text. Now that we've created it, you can see it's created this giant thing, which isn't great. It's not great to be this giant thing, but as you can see, it doesn't actually exist in the game. It's just showing you. So that entire box there is the screen size. So you can see the game over here. It's like this. You can see in the bottom corner this text box, which we've created. So as we're going to just, that was the right choice. We can just move it down a bit, and now you can see there's the new text in the bottom corner. Now, of course, we don't want it to just have it say new text, so let's have it say points 0 by changing the text in the text box. And then let's change its color. You can click on this to change the color, and let's make it a nice green. Nah. Blue? Yeah, blue's nice. So all that will be used for is telling the player how many points they have. The next step is to say, well, is, of course, how do we get points? Well, to get points, we're going to need a way to get them. So in this case, I'm just going to make a sphere, which will act as our points. So we will just go around and we'll collect a bunch of spheres, and that'll add to our points. That's how we'll do this game. Just that we actually have a game once we finish this. Put it over here, just so that we can see it straight away. Let's make it a bit cooler looking. So let's rename it to points, or maybe we rename it to maybe pickup. That might be good. It's the thing you pick up and you get points from it. And then everything's nice and gray here, but we might want to have a little bit of color. So let's add a bit of a color to our thing. So we're going to right click inside the project area, and we can create a new material. Now materials can be used to basically do any sort of texture. So you can place images into here, you can do anything like that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it a nice red point, and then I will also make it glow a little. Glow a lot. Then we can stick that on there, and you can see it's nice and red, and it'll be nice to go pick it up. Now, you'll notice that it doesn't have a rigid body. We never added a rigid body to it, so it sort of floats in the air. And if we go and touch it, it sort of stops us there, because we're still colliding with it. Now, of course, we don't want to get stopped when we go to pick up points. So what we're going to do is go to it and change its collider. We're going to say it's a trigger. And what that will do is make it into a trigger, so it no longer acts with physics. So I can go run into it and walk directly through it. But in our case, it'll disappear when we pick it up. So we won't see us walking through it. So, we'll also want something to control all the points. So in this case, it's best to create an empty object, which basically it will just hold the points system. That's a great name for it. And we need to give it a new script, which we'll call points control. And we'll open this up. Hey, points control. Points control is a quite simple little, well, it's not that simple. It'll be a bit simple. You'll see. It's all it's going to do is it's going to take whatever the points are, and it will add them to whatever is being displayed. So we'll need two things. We'll need a public text point display, which this variable will hold the text box that we just created in order to show us where, or to show the script where it should be putting the points so the player can see them. And we'll make a private one, which basically just means only it can see this one, which will be an integer, which is any positive or negative integer, any positive or negative whole number. So no floating points, no points, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. Or -1, -2, -3, -3, 4, whatever, etc. And also 0. We'll call it points, and it'll start off being 0, because you always start off with 0 points. And in this case, we're not going to need to use either of these things, because we're not changing anything during the whenever a frame happens, and we're not changing anything right at the beginning. What we're going to do is create our own function. So this one, we're going to put public in front of it so that other things can access it. We're going to call it add points. Add point, because we're only going to be adding 1 point. And then we'll take how many points we used to have, and we'll make it equal to So basically what this line is doing is it's saying points is equal to however many points we had last time plus 1. So we're adding 1 to the number of points. This can also be written as points plus equals 1, which means exactly the same thing. It just means add 1 to points. Or it can be written as points plus plus, which the points plus plus basically just means you increment points by 1. So that means add 1 to points. I'll do it as points plus equals 1, just because it's easier to read, and then later we can make it so that we can up by multiple points rather than just 1. And then we'll display the points. So we'll grab the text element of the text, and we will change that to say points So what I'm doing here is I'm saying, so this is a string, so anything within these two quotes will be printed exactly as it is. It doesn't matter if it's a number, letters, spaces, anything. So in this case, I'm printing points followed by a space, just to say this is how many points you have. And then this plus just means and then also print, or also display this. And this is the number of points we have. So right now, we're not getting any points, but we'll very quickly go change that. By jumping back into Unity. Clicking on this blow, and when it is picked up, we want to do something. So you know points control. You're going to be just point. And we'll create a new script called point. in this script, we'll need a couple more variables. One public one. Apparently I can't spell. A public one called, which will be grabbing the points control script called, and we'll name it point. We'll call it point controller. And then also we'll need, nope, we won't need anything else. So now we've got a nice little, so now that will allow us to point towards this script. And then we can just run this thing. I'll show you what we're actually going to be using it for later. So, just like over in the controller, we have this on collision enter. So when you hit a collision, that triggers. In this case, we have a on, because this is a trigger, not a collider, we have on trigger enter. And we want to grab the point controller, and we want to have it add a point. So now when something hits the trigger, it will add a point. Now we can start playing the game now, and we will see. You can watch this number here. When I go over this, did I miss it? Or is it not working? Ooh. So it's not working. It's a very simple reason why it's not working. Because I didn't go and tell it where the points control was. So it was going, hey, I don't know where points control is. So we want to grab the point system, drag it over here, and put it into here. And it will recognize that there's a points control on there. And now it will be able to actually work. So now if I push into it, I've done it again, where I forgot to do something. Because if you jump over here, you can see there's none text. That wants the text box, so let's grab the text box and drag it into there. And now, should work. And boom, there you go. 1 point, 2 points, 3 points, 4 points, 5 points. So the thing is, when you pick up a point in a game, right, it disappears. So that's what we'll have to do, is make this point disappear when you pick it up. So we'll jump back over to the scripting part of it. And we will go ahead and destroy this. So this is a very simple line of code which Unity allows us to use for free. It's super useful. You will use it a lot when you have if you want to do a game which is destroyed. And that simply means that you remove that thing from existence. You delete it, and it's gone for this game. Of course, it'll reappear once you stop the game. So if we move over, we can collect it, and it disappears. We've got 1 point, and now it's gone. And when we stop the game, it will reappear. Now then, what do I want to do now? Now, you saw how I forgot to do that. If I start putting points all over the place, I'm going to keep forgetting to put the point system in there. So what I want to do is make it able to choose its own point system. So since we have the name of this object here, and this is where the points control is, we can jump back into here, and we can say, when you start up, I want you to make the point. I want you to choose your own point controller. So you're going to find something named point system, and then you're going to get the points control off it. And so then it will grab its own thing. So basically this means it will find an object in the scene called point system, and then from that object it will get the points control. And now that we've done that, we can go ahead and make some more pickups. So we could copy and paste it a bunch of times and then move them around. Ooh, look at that, we got a bunch of different points now. We can go grab a bunch of points. The issue is, now we've only got this many points, and we gotta do that all manually, which is annoying. But look, we now have 4 points. 3 points. We'd have 4 points if I was able to actually control this. Yeah, so there are ways to make it less slidey. I just won't go over them inside this video. I might do this again and go over it again for that. But let's do one final thing before ending this stream, and let's make the points generate. So let's make the game create points wherever we want them to. So how we'll do that is we'll jump onto the point system, and we can jump into points control. And you know when I said that we weren't going to use update? I lied. We're going to use update. So now we have update back. And we are going to use the instantiate command. The instantiate function, and functions are basically just commands that you'll run. So like for instance, this is called a function. This is the add point function which we created. This is the update function, and the update function is commanded to run once every frame by Unity. Anyway, the instantiate function will allow you to create new objects in the scene. So we can use it to generate new things. So the first thing that we'll need to do is make us have what we want to create, and it will be called a game object. It will be called point prefab, as it is the prefab or prefabricated item of the point which we will be creating. And stick the point prefab. The next place to do is to add what the where to place it. So remember, when we do where, we need a vector. So we'll need vector 3. And this one, we're going to use random. So random.randomRange will create a random number between whatever we put into here. So let's say anywhere between -100 and 100. And then we'll do the same thing for the y. No, that's the same thing for y, and then for the z, for the up and down, we'll just make it between 0 and how high? Let's just go 10. So it's not too far off the ground, so it will be useful. And then, after we've done that, we need to do one last thing. Oh, you can just do this. Because there's a new version of Unity, you can just do random range rather than random.range rather than random.randomRange. And finally, we'll just need which direction it's facing. Because it's a ball, it doesn't matter, so we can just use a quaternion? I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but it's a method of finding out where you're looking. It's a rotation, and we can just do dot identity, as that will grab I believe it will grab the up direction, but it doesn't matter as they're spheres. So they can be rotated wherever they want. Doesn't matter. So now that we've got that, we can jump back into Unity. We can look at the point system. And we need to put our point prefab into here. Now, to make a prefab, what you have to do is you have to grab your points, grab the thing that you want to make into a prefab, drag it into your project window down here, and then drop it. And that will create this, which is a prefab asset. And then we just go back to the point system, we click on it, we drag it over, and we place it into the points prefab. And now, when we click play, you can see that it's creating them everywhere. So the one issue that we've done it is happening every frame. So every frame, it will create a new point somewhere inside that box that we specified. You can delay this with delays and other different timers and things like that. Those are creating them halfway in the ground because we specified 0 and the ground is at 0. So it creates them at 0, which is halfway in the ground. But yeah. You can also see where the boundary is, and I misjudged how big our plane was. Because it is definitely bigger than 100 by 100. Or 200 by 200. Because it's minus 100 plus 100, minus 100 plus 100. So if we just sort of run around here, we'll probably gain a bunch of points just by running around and jumping. Because there's way too many balls everywhere. Which, this might be what you want. It's fun. But there are many ways to slow it down. My favorite, and probably the worst way to do it, is to go into here and use some more random. So, I'm just going to show this, and then the stream's probably going to end. But let's do this because it's fun. And then, so this will also teach you a little bit more about the if statement. It's talking outside of it. Okay, so the if random.range 0 to 100, what this means is less than or equals to. So basically what this means is it will create a random number between 0 and 100, and if it is less than or equal to 5, then it will be true. So, as I've said previously with if statements, if it's true, then it does the things in here. If it's not true, so if it's false, then it won't do these things in here. So, all this is doing is it is giving it a 5% chance to create a point, a pickup in a random location every frame. As I said, this is probably the worst way to slow down one of those things, but it is a fun way, and it is useful in other cases, and also let me teach you about operators. So that's why I did it. I'm going to stop giving excuses for probably what is the worst way to do it. If you want better ways, ask me. I probably know. I definitely know better ways to do it. But yes, that's the way I chose it. And as you can see, that has slowed it down considerably. Although it is still quite fast. Although it is a very large area. But yeah. There you go. And if you want to make it so they don't go into the ground, we just got to jump over here and make it so that this starts at 1. So now they won't be spawned while in the ground. This one looks pretty close to the ground, but that's probably at 1 there. I don't see any that's lower than that. And yeah, that is how to make a quick game in... yeah, so GUIs, you need to do some stuff to do to move it. That's how to make a very quick game in Unity with some coding. Yeah, I don't know if Twitch will save us, but I am recording right now, so I will just upload it to YouTube or something and link it so that people can watch it afterwards. So, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching if you're watching after the fact. And see y'all some other time.